It was supposed to be another inspiring Teen Truth Talk segment where young people shared their dreams, challenges, and insights about growing up in the modern world. Ellen loved these conversations. The honesty of teenagers, their unfiltered perspectives, their ability to see through adult pretenses with laser-like clarity. But when 16-year-old Jordan Mitchell stepped up to the microphone with a determined expression and something burning in his eyes, Ellen had no idea she was about to receive the most brutally honest feedback of her career. What Jordan said next would shatter her carefully constructed public persona and force her to confront a question she'd been avoiding for years. Was her positivity real, or was it the performance of a lifetime? Jordan stood at the teen microphone station, a lanky kid with dark curly hair that fell into his eyes, wearing a black hoodie that seemed to swallow his thin frame. There was something in his posture, shoulders slightly hunched, hands shoved deep in his pockets, that suggested someone carrying invisible weight. His brown eyes held an intensity that seemed older than his 16 years, the kind of gravity that comes from thinking too much about life's contradictions. Ellen approached with her trademark energy, that bright smile that had comforted millions, her light blue blazer perfectly tailored, every detail of her appearance radiating the polish that made her America's favorite daytime host. "Hi there, what's your name, sweetheart?" Jordan Mitchell. His voice was steady, but there was something deliberate about the way he spoke, like he was choosing each word carefully. "Jordan Mitchell, great name. Where are you from, Jordan?" "Portland, Oregon." He paused, studying Ellen's face with an intensity that made her slightly uncomfortable. "Can I ask you something, Ellen?" Ellen's smile widened. This was exactly what she loved about teenagers, their directness, their willingness to engage. "Of course, that's what we're here for. What's on your mind?" Jordan looked directly into her eyes, then glanced at the audience, then back to Ellen. When he spoke, his words cut through the studio's cheerful atmosphere like a blade through silk. "Everyone says you're like this super positive person who spreads joy and makes people happy, but I think you're fake. Like no one is that positive all the time. It's not possible. So my question is, why do you pretend to be someone you're not?" The silence that followed was unlike anything Ellen had experienced in nearly 2 decades of television. It wasn't the comfortable pause before a punchline or the dramatic beat before a reveal. This was the silence of shock, of a direct challenge to the very foundation of her public identity. Ellen's smile faltered for the first time in the segment, not because she was offended, but because Jordan's words had hit something deep and true that she'd spent years carefully avoiding. The cameras captured every micro-expression, the slight widening of her eyes, the way her shoulders tensed, the moment when her professional mask slipped just enough to reveal the human being underneath. Ellen started, then stopped. For perhaps the first time in her career, she was genuinely caught off guard, not by an unexpected question, but by the unflinching honesty behind it. Jordan continued, his voice gaining strength as he spoke his truth. "I mean, I've been watching you since I was little, and my mom always says, 'Look how happy Ellen is, see how positive she is,' but like, that's not real life. Real life is messy and sad and confusing, so either you're like superhuman or something, or you're putting on an act." The audience was completely silent now, hanging on every word. Even Ellen's crew, who had seen her handle every possible situation with grace and humor, were watching with fascination as their beloved host faced the most direct challenge to her authenticity she'd ever received on camera. Ellen took a deep breath, and something shifted in her expression. The performance energy that usually radiated from her dimmed slightly, replaced by something more raw, more real. "Jordan," she said quietly, "that's actually the most honest question anyone has ever asked me on this show." Jordan nodded, not backing down. "I'm not trying to be mean. It's just, I struggle with depression, you know, and everyone's always telling me to be positive and look on the bright side like you do. But when I try to be that positive, it feels fake. It feels like lying. So I started wondering if maybe you're just really good at lying to yourself too." Ellen felt something crack open in her chest. This 16-year-old kid had just articulated something she'd been avoiding for years, the exhausting effort it sometimes took to maintain her public persona, the weight of being everyone's source of light even when her own world felt dark. "Jordan," Ellen said, and her voice was different now, stripped of performance, "can I be real with you for a minute?" Jordan nodded, his intense gaze never wavering. Ellen walked closer to him, leaving her mark, abandoning the choreographed movement that usually defined her interactions with guests. She was moving toward honesty, and honesty required proximity, intimacy, The kind of conversation that happens between two people rather than a host and an audience member. You're right, Ellen said simply, and the admission seemed to surprise even her. You're absolutely right. No one is that positive all the time. Not me, not anyone. The studio was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming. Ellen's confession was creating a space for truth that transcended entertainment. Jordan, there are mornings when I wake up and the last thing I want to do is come here and be Ellen. There are days when I'm dealing with personal stuff, relationship stuff, health scares, family problems, and the idea of walking out here and being sunshine and rainbows feels impossible. Jordan leaned forward slightly, his skepticism beginning to transform into curiosity. But here's the thing I've learned, Ellen continued, and maybe this will help you understand the difference between fake positivity and real positivity. When I'm having one of those dark mornings, I don't pretend the darkness isn't there. I acknowledge it, I sit with it for a minute, and then I make a choice. What kind of choice? Jordan asked, his voice softer now. Ellen sat down on the edge of the stage, bringing herself to Jordan's eye level, making this conversation as intimate and real as possible. I choose to look for something, anything, that might make someone else's day a little brighter. Not because I'm naturally happy, but because I've learned that sometimes the act of giving joy creates actual joy. It's like, fake it till you make it, but with a purpose bigger than yourself. Jordan processed this, his expression thoughtful. So you're saying you're not naturally this positive? Ellen laughed, and for the first time in the conversation, it was completely genuine. Jordan, my natural state is probably closer to yours than you think. I'm anxious, I overthink everything, I worry about whether people really like me or just like the idea of me. I have days when I question everything about my life, my choices, my impact on the world. Really? Jordan's voice carried a note of surprise and something else, hope. Really? The difference isn't that I don't feel those dark feelings. The difference is that I've learned to use them as fuel for something bigger. When I'm sad, I try to find ways to prevent other people from feeling that same sadness. When I'm lonely, I try to connect with people who might be feeling lonely too. When I'm scared, I try to be brave enough for both of us. Ellen stood up and addressed not just Jordan but the entire studio. Jordan just called me out on something really important. He's right that constant positivity can feel fake, because it often is fake. Toxic positivity, pretending everything is fine when it's not, is just another form of lying. Ellen walked back to Jordan, her energy completely different from when she'd started the segment. But Jordan, what you're seeing when you watch me isn't fake positivity. It's intentional positivity. It's the choice to focus on light even when you're surrounded by darkness. It's the decision to be the person you needed when you were struggling. Jordan was quiet for a long moment, absorbing this distinction. So you're saying the positivity is real, but it's... Yes. God, yes. It's work. Some days it's the hardest work I do. Some days I have to dig so deep to find something genuine to be grateful for, something real to be excited about. But the work is what makes it real, not fake. Ellen's vulnerability was creating something magical in the studio. Audience members were leaning forward, completely absorbed in this unscripted moment of truth. Jordan, can I ask you something now? He nodded. When you're struggling with depression, what helps? What makes the dark days a little more bearable? Jordan thought about this seriously. Music mostly, and my little sister, when she laughs at something stupid I do, it reminds me that maybe I'm not completely worthless. Ellen's eyes filled with tears. So you already know how to do it. You already know how to find light in darkness. You just don't give yourself credit for it. I guess, but it's not enough to make me feel better most of the time. Ellen walked closer to Jordan again, speaking directly to him but also to every teenager watching who might be struggling with similar feelings. Jordan, what if I told you that feeling better isn't always the goal? What if I told you that sometimes the goal is just feeling useful, feeling connected, feeling like you matter to someone else? I don't understand. The positivity you see from me, it didn't come from being naturally happy. It came from being naturally sad and learning that helping other people feel less sad actually helps me feel less sad too. It's not about pretending darkness doesn't exist. It's about becoming someone who can light candles in dark rooms. Jordan was staring at Ellen with new understanding. So when you seem super happy on TV, sometimes I genuinely am, but sometimes I'm choosing to act happy because I know someone watching might need to see that it's possible. Sometimes I'm performing hope for people who can't find their own hope right now. That's not fake, Jordan said slowly. That's actually really hard. Ellen nodded. It's the hardest thing I do, but it's also the most meaningful thing I do. Jordan was quiet for another moment. Then, Ellen, I owe you an apology. I thought you were fake because I thought being positive meant never feeling negative, but you're saying it means feeling negative and choosing to do something good with it anyway. Ellen wiped her eyes, no longer caring about her makeup or her image. Jordan, you don't owe me an apology. You gave me a gift today. You made me be honest about something I've never been honest about. You helped me understand my own choices better. Ellen addressed the audience directly. Ladies and gentlemen, Jordan just taught all of us something crucial about authenticity. Real authenticity isn't about being perfect or naturally positive. It's about being honest about your struggles and then choosing to use those struggles to help other people. Jordan raised his hand like he was in school, and Ellen laughed. Yes, Jordan? Can I say something to the other kids watching? Ellen handed him the microphone. Jordan looked directly into the camera. If you're like me and you think positive people are fake, maybe they're not. Maybe they're just people who figured out how to turn their pain into purpose. And if you're struggling like I am, maybe the goal isn't to feel better all the time. Maybe the goal is to help someone else feel better, and then see what happens to you. Ellen was crying openly now. Jordan, you just became my teacher. You just taught me something about myself that I didn't even know. Jordan smiled for the first time since he'd stepped up to the microphone. I don't think you're fake anymore. I think you're just really good at being strong for other people. Ellen walked over to Jordan and, without any consideration for television protocol, pulled him into a genuine hug. Jordan, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to keep questioning things that don't seem real to you. The world needs people who demand authenticity, but I also want you to remember that sometimes the most authentic thing you can do is choose hope when hope is hard. As Ellen released Jordan, she made a decision that would change the direction of her show. Jordan, I want to try something different. Instead of ending this segment here, I want to keep this conversation going. I want to start having more real talks about the difference between fake positivity and intentional positivity. Would you help me do that? Jordan nodded eagerly. Can we talk about how hard it is to be a teenager when everyone expects you to be happy all the time? Yes. Can we talk about how it's okay to not be okay, but it's also okay to try to help other people be okay? Yes. And can we talk about how depression doesn't mean you're broken, it just means you feel things really deeply? Ellen was nodding, energized by this unexpected direction. Jordan, you just gave me the blueprint for the most important conversations this show has ever had. As the segment ended and Ellen moved on to other parts of the show, Jordan returned to his seat in the teens section, but the impact of their conversation continued to reverberate through the studio and beyond. The episode, when it aired 3 weeks later, became one of the most discussed in Ellen's history. Real positivity began trending on social media as people shared their own struggles with maintaining hope in difficult circumstances. Ellen received thousands of letters from viewers who had been struggling with similar questions about authenticity and positivity. But perhaps the most meaningful response came from Jordan himself. He started a blog called Intentional Light, where he documented his journey from depression to purpose, sharing how he was learning to use his sensitivity as a superpower rather than a weakness. 6 months later, Ellen invited Jordan back to the show to share his progress. He had started a peer counseling program at his school, helping other teenagers distinguish between toxic positivity and genuine hope. Jordan taught me that the most radical thing you can do is be real, Ellen said during that follow-up episode. He taught me that authenticity isn't about being perfect, it's about being honest about your imperfections and then choosing to do something beautiful with them anyway. Jordan's challenge to Ellen became a turning point for the show itself. Ellen began incorporating more conversations about mental health, about the work required to maintain hope, about the difference between performing happiness and choosing resilience. Years later, when Jordan graduated from college with a degree in counseling psychology, Ellen was there in the audience. In his valedictorian speech, Jordan said, "When I was 16, I accused Ellen DeGeneres of being fake. She taught me that the opposite of fake isn't perfect, it's honest. She taught me that real strength isn't about never falling down, it's about falling down and then helping someone else get back up." Ellen's response to Jordan's brutal honesty became a masterclass in authentic leadership, showing millions of viewers that being challenged can be a gift, that vulnerability can be a strength, and that sometimes the most important conversations begin with someone brave enough to say, "I think you're not being real with us." Because sometimes a 16-year-old's accusation of fakeness can lead to the most authentic moment of your career. Sometimes being called out is actually being called up to a higher level of honesty. a deeper level of connection, and a more meaningful way of using your platform to help others navigate the beautiful, difficult work of choosing light in a world that often feels dark. Jordan taught Ellen that authenticity isn't about being naturally positive. It's about being naturally human and then choosing every day to use your humanity in service of something bigger than yourself, especially when that choice requires more courage than you think you have.